Scott DesJarlais has a little bit of break amongst the action up in Washington, D.C., and he joins us on the program to talk about things that are going on up there. Congressman, always good to check in with you. How are you, Scott?
Doing good. I was just impressed with that all-star lineup you just named off. I've seen you on your live version. You're kind of pretty.
Well, you always pretty it up. When we get that, when we have you on the phone, we throw that still photo of Scott DesJarlais up right beside Matt Murphy, and you always pretty it up when we do that, Scott.
So. Right about like 15 years old, right?
How long have you been in Congress? I bet this was taken the year after you got there.
2011, so yeah. I haven't changed a bit.
Look, I had my concerns. I want to start here because I don't think you and I have had a chance to talk since the BBB became the BBL. And I had my we talked about the concerns with it, that maybe we're not taking a big enough bite of that apple, but obviously the good far outweighed the bad. And frankly, some of the action that's happening in the Senate over the last 24 hours and coming back to the House reconfirms in my mind that, yes, you conservatives in Washington, D.C. are serious about continuing the cuts that we've been talking about throughout the course of the year. Let's start with the BBL and what you think has been accomplished there, and then we'll move on to some of these DOGE cuts.
Yeah, I mean, the painfully obvious thing is securing the border, which was kind of already done before the bill was passed, but it codified a number of executive orders. I'm thinking like 28 executive orders that Trump had issued. It codified those, but certainly the border is an entirely different creature. The military has changed drastically from 6-7 months ago in our standing in the world and how we're viewed by our adversaries. So changes that we did there, energy security has been improved drastically, and I think we're on track to continue to improve financially and fiscally with bringing in manufacturing and honestly, there's so many things in that bill. It's hard to talk about them all here, but it's important, I think, that we did it that way. We did not get everything we wanted. We did not get as many cuts as we wanted. But I look back to 2017 when Paul Ryan wanted to do it in what he called 3 buckets. And, of course, then the tax extension was huge. We were about to see the largest tax hike in history. And so getting that tax cut made permanent was enormously important. But that's all we really got done in 2017 under Paul Ryan. We didn't fix the health care, and I can't even remember what the other major thing was. And then we just kind of fizzled out, and we lost the majority. And so I think getting all that done, or as much done as we did in this one bill, was extremely important because you never know how the midterms are going to go. He's a lame duck president, and I've told people it's possible that 80% of what Trump gets done before this August, because then, you get into the following year, election year, you may or may not keep the majority. So it was huge. And the things I I wouldn't say get a charge out of, but I heard they were going to carry coffins by my office in Murfreesboro because of all the people that were going to die because of the Medicaid cuts. There was calls, and then of course the SNAP cuts too. For one thing, the Medicaid cuts, none of it even begins until 2028, and that's trying to get people who are able-bodied to work so they don't have to be on Medicare. In theory, they get a better job that has health insurance and pays rural hospitals better and puts them in a better place. And it's interesting that across all political spectrums, independent, Republican, Democrats, it's high 70s to mid 80s across all political spectrums that people believe that able-bodied people who can work should work. In other words, more people pulling the wagon than sitting in it makes us a stronger, more secure, and financially secure country. And so, the myths that were thrown out about Medicare and SNAP cuts aren't true. And they're saying that people who are not here legally are not receiving these benefits. That's not true. If you're 18 or under and you're in this country illegally, you automatically qualify for SNAP. If you're seeking asylum and get it, you qualify for SNAP. If you're refugees, you qualify for SNAP. So American taxpayers are paying for non-citizens to get things like Medicaid and SNAP and many other benefits. And so it cleans a lot of that up. So there's so many misconceptions that were thrown out there because of Trump derangement syndrome or whatnot. But we need to let this marinate. We need to let it work to see if this strategy on tariffs and bringing back manufacturing, getting people to work, all pan out the way he thinks they will, and I honestly think it's going to help, we're going to have a stronger economy. We're going to have more income. We're going to have more tax revenue. And, that's how you turn this ship around. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes time, and we got to believe and give it a chance.
I mean, you know that you've captured the narrative when the political left has to, referring to SNAP benefits and the changes in SNAP and the changes in Medicaid, all of the objections and all of these declarations, and we see some leftists in the state of Tennessee doing this on the regular. They won't come on our show. They won't talk about the actual bill and what it does in terms of asking able-bodied people to provide a certain level of work or charitable work in order to qualify for these Medicaid benefits. But they just have to lie about it. I mean, on national news programs where they don't get pushback, on their own social media feeds, they are simply lying about what's in the bill in order to claim that people like Scott DesJarlais don't care if grandma dies because she can't get Medicare or Medicaid.
Exactly. So, he's a doctor, for God's sakes, and he doesn't care about patients.
Right.
And,
right.
Totally untrue. And as far as the as you said, the stories that are out there that people who are disabled are going to lose their benefits, or a mother with 3 or 4 children at home has to go to work, and how they're going to take care of their kids. There's so many exemptions built in there that really you're targeting a fairly small population, in my opinion, in terms of who are asking to work. And if you go to work and you don't get a great job and you're not making money, you still qualify for those benefits. We're just asking that you contribute a little bit if you can. In other words, it's basically telling the lazy people to get off their butts and quit living off the government dole, because we've just made it too easy for that to occur.
Well, and I should remind the listeners, and I know most of them know this, or the viewers, and you well know it too, Congressman, that the costs of Medicaid, I think my figure was just over 60% increase since 2019. I mean, it's just it's an unsustainable cost growth to continue to heap upon our already burdensome debt. And I want to transition there because Senate Republicans thankfully forced through a package last night, late in the evening, I believe, that would codify roughly $9 billion in spending reductions, rolling back, certain foreign aid, and obviously, the ones that the cuts that the left like to talk about, NPR and PBS. Do you think this will get past the House of Representatives?
Yeah, well, that's what we're working on right now, and it's held up in Rules Committee at the moment. Normally, this would be considered a flyout day. We should have probably already voted on this, and we would be flying back to the district. It looks like we're probably going to get pushed into tomorrow now, because they're trying to attach they're trying to attach Epstein file things to this rule bill that has nothing to do with the Rescissions Act, and we can talk about the Epstein thing in a minute too if you want.
Yeah.
But so the Rescission Act cuts PBR. I had some public broadcasting folks from Murfreesboro and Chattanooga in here. They did mainly like radio and entertainment. They were less news. But I mean, even the director, can't remember her name, but admitted that like 87 out of 87 employees were registered Democrats, and it was a propaganda machine for the left, and they promoted LGBTQ agendas and DEI and woke agenda, Green New Deal agenda, and it was completely biased, and there was just really no way they could deny it. But that's what it had become, was a mouthpiece for the liberal left. And it's not what it was designed to do, to be a public broadcast system that they inform the public of important things. It became biased, and so that was cut. And then, of course, a lot of USAID. There are some good things. I mean, they put like $400 million back in, and I've traveled to some countries around the world where there are real needs for that, but there's also probably about 60, 70, or 80% that was just waste. And so that's still being cut, but there are a few places that it does some good things. Most programs do have some good intentions when they're formed, and then they get just blown out of proportion, kind of like Medicaid, where blue states were taking advantage of it and expanding it beyond what it was ever intended to be.
Now, I have it on good authority in the United States Senate. This is Chuck Schumer. I think you can hear this, Scott. I mean, Chuck Schumer told us yesterday, it's about 17 seconds of him explaining to us that people, if we cut funding from NPR or or PBS, people are going to
Now, when
die.
a hurricane makes landfall, people need immediate, up-to-date alerts to stay safe. And sometimes, all too often, public broadcasting is the only way for people to hear what's going on. It's a matter of life and death.
So Chuck Schumer, and I don't mean to laugh, but this is just such lunacy. He is suggesting that if we cut funding on the federal level of PBS and NPR, that people are going to die from hurricanes.
Yeah, I don't remember the last time I got my alert from that, and I live in a pretty darn rural area. So, but that's a democratic way. You know, people are going to die. We're going to starve children. We're going to kill elderly. We're going to hurt the disabled, and that's what Republicans do. And so we get demagogued on pretty much everything we do, and that type of. I don't think there's a lot of credibility in their dialogue anymore. I mean, they love to drop the F-bomb, and the sky is always falling. And when Biden was in office, we did some of that too. But I think everyone's seeing now a lot of that was justified. But the news media is over the top, and I'll say both the right and left, go to the extremes a little bit. And there's not a lot of news media out there that's right down the middle. But I got to say that I think that we're proven right more often than wrong, as opposed to what you're just hearing from Chuck Schumer and the other people that are jumping on Hakeem Jeffries and the AOCs and the other people that seem to draw the media attention from the left.
So just to clarify before I ask you about Epstein, so the holdup now is that Democrats are trying to throw on amendments and unrelated items around Epstein onto the rescission bill?
Right. I think they're trying to just make Republicans. I think they already did this once last week on a rule. They had an Epstein thing that was ruled out of order, so the Republicans voted against it. And I know I got attacked on social media for voting against releasing Epstein files, and I thought, I didn't vote on anything like that. And then I realized that in Rules Committee they tried to do that. So whatever 5 or 6 or 9 Republicans that were on the Rules Committee who voted to not include that in the rule where it shouldn't have been, created a talking point for them to say Republicans are against releasing that. And they're trying to do something similar today, or do a sense of Congress that the files should be released. And I was asked by, I don't remember, NBC News or somebody a few days ago, this was before Speaker Johnson and other people started coming out, what I thought about releasing the Epstein files. And I said, well, there's pros and cons to that. If somebody just happened to be at the same event as Jeffrey Epstein and they're on some kind of list, but they don't really know him, that could be used against them in a negative way. But now if Pam Bondi has people on a list that are known sex offenders and willingly had sex with underage girls, then she should be prosecuting them. And that's my quote in the news.
100%.
And that's the way I feel. If she has carnal knowledge of people who committed a crime, she should be prosecuting them. And whether we trust her to do that or not remains to be seen. But there's different ways to do that. You can get a bipartisan group of the Intel Committee or whoever to go in and review it with them until they're satisfied that there's nobody being protected or covered for that reason. But certainly if there's a pedophile and they purposely did that, they need to be prosecuted regardless of who it is. So I don't think it's that difficult.
And and I know that some in our audience, some folks that support the president and support you, Scott, and they like a lot of what the president's doing. They don't want this to become a distraction. But my answer is, look, I don't think there's anything wrong if, to use a baseball analogy, if we see our team commit an error in the field, there's nothing wrong with calling that out and saying, yeah, that was our error, that was on us. And frankly, I think that, our man, his administration, when they came out with the folders and the Epstein Files Phase 1 stuff and all of those optics, and then Pam Bondi declared that it was on her desk and we're getting more and we just misplayed the ball on all that.
Well, she needs a better answer. She needs to explain, okay, this is what I said, and this is what I meant, or this is whatever. But yeah, that looks suspicious. It smells, and I don't like it, and you don't like it, and a lot of people don't like it. And we're talking people on the right. We want transparency, and I don't think there's ever been a more transparent president than Trump. I mean, if it's on his mind, it's out his mouth. Right. And so, I think that I think people are going to be sorely disappointed who think that there's some kind of real conspiracy in there. But if that's the case, there are certain reasons, as I said, that you can have guilt by association and not even know the guy, but just say you were at a gala that he was at, but a political opponent or someone else uses that to attack you, and you may be perfectly innocent, but you have to prove that you're innocent. And so sometimes there's a reason not to just list a whole bunch of names. But again, if there's criminal activity that's identified in there and she's not going after it, then that's wrong and that needs to be corrected. But she needs to give a better explanation